Hi there, Ronnie here, coming at you with video. Due to personal stuff happening right now with me, I wasn't expecting to make another video for a few weeks, actually. But a comment was made on a Twitter post last night that I replied to, and I was so shocked by the post that I thought I'd do a video on it because I just don't get the person's point of view at all. Some context. Over the past few weeks, people have started to get sort of leaks and information from Wizards of the Coast regarding the next iteration of Dungeons and Dragons. And from what's being reported by various people, they're not impressed on two fronts. One, it looks like Wizards of the Coast are going to try and really push monetization on the brand. It also looks like, and a lot of this could be speculation or presumption, but it's looking like they're really moving towards the next iteration of D&D being more of or predominantly an online experience. Where people will have to pay to use anything and everything, and it will all be very regulated. The other bone of contention is the amendment to the open game license, which has served Dungeons and Dragons very, very well since its implementation in 3rd edition. Which is essentially people are allowed to make content for Dungeons and Dragons. They don't, there's a lot of third-party content out there, and Hasbro, Wizards of the Coast, do not take any sort of cut of that. The only thing that the OGL requires is that you actually have a page with the OGL written on it to show that you acknowledge it's part of it. Well, this apparently is going to be changed, and there's going to be more of a payment if your supplement or the thing that you're selling, the third party thing you're selling, earns a certain amount, then Wizards of the Coast are entitled to a cut. And this has the D&D community, for what I've seen so far, very upset, very angry, very disturbed, and very disillusioned with Wizards of the Coast. I'm on record. I don't play D&D 5th. I have played it. I don't own it. Not going to run it. And my personal opinion is I don't believe it's the best RPG out of there. It's certainly the most played. It's certainly the most famous. Neither of those are an indication of quality. That's about brand recognition. What do I think of the news? With regards to D&D being pushed more online, if that is true, I think that's very worrying. I think that's a dumb move by Wizards of the Coast. Whilst RPGs can be played online, I do a lot of it myself, the beauty of this hobby is being able to sit around a table with people and play. That's the beauty of a tabletop hobby. And whilst distance and lockdown kind of pushes or pushed people into playing in online games, and those games can be perfectly fun. God knows the ones I've been playing on Pair of Geeks and the one I'm running on Discord is perfectly fine. To me, I will always prefer round the table. I think trying to find money, I understand it from a business point of view, because at the end of the day they're not interested in profit. The product, they're interested in a profit. But to me, it sort of indicates that the upper echelons of Wizard of the Coast don't actually understand the market that they're trying to take on. It's almost as if they're trying to turn tabletop D&D into an MMO of sorts, and I think that's the wrong move. As for the changes to the OGL, I also think that's a mistake. I think one of the reasons Dungeons and Dragons has become this powerhouse, this name that everyone knows, has been because of third-party content. And I think if you again, it's all about, they're eyeing up profit rather than looking at the long term. If there's no real good third-party content coming out anymore, then there's no reason, people are going to look elsewhere. And this is where the comment on Twitter comes in. A guy put up a post, a very simple post, saying that if your answer to Wizards' plan is to tell D&D players, play another game, then you're being an asshole. You're showing a lack of empathy or sympathy or any lack of sort of social awareness. And I have to say, I think that's the biggest load of nonsense I've heard in a while. But let's answer it fully. Firstly, there is absolutely no need for any D&D player, to get the next version of D&D. None. You could have the 3 core books, get yourself a campaign setting, be it one from Wizards themselves or third-party content right now, and you have years of gaming pleasure right there and then. You do not need the next generation of D&D. Period. No one is required to go there. No one. I have a friend and her husband, and they still play AD&D First Edition. Has never seen any reason to go beyond. He likes that system, he's comfortable with it, could write games for it. Happy as Larry, he can get on with it. He doesn't need to get the next one, the next one, the next one. You know, you don't have to keep up with the Joneses. You can just get the next. You don't have to get the next generation game. If you like D&D 5th, if you're perfectly happy playing D&D 5th, that's your game of choice, fine. You do not need this next version at all. You should have enough right now for years upon years of gaming. Have at it. Wonderful. So, I honestly feel that nothing Wizards of the Coast has said affects current players. It only affects players if they've got the mindset that they have to get the next edition of D&D, which they don't. But if what Wizards of the Coast has said has got you disillusioned with the company, and I understand that completely for the reasons I've mentioned, and because of that you are perhaps reluctant to give them money, that you're reluctant to continue to support the company, that you feel that D&D as a brand has been tainted, and that you no longer wish to associate yourself with it, then I see absolutely no reason why people can't say, well, there are other games out there. Because it's true. Whilst D&D is undeniably the biggest game in town, it's not the only game in town. It's not even the only fantasy game in town. There's a truckload, a ton of other fantasy RPGs out there. And if you have become disillusioned with Wizards, then why not take this opportunity to have a look at something else? So I don't get this guy for saying, telling people that they can just try another game is being an arsehole. It's not. You're being honest. You do not need the next generation of D&D. There is absolutely no reason for getting it. None. If you don't want it. If you're playing D&D 5th edition and you like it and you've got the main books and you've got a campaign setting or two, fine. I think people who are brand new to the hobby, who have only heard about D&D because of Critical Role, because of Stranger Things, because of Big Bang Theory, I would say definitely to them, look at alternatives. As for the idea that we're not being socially aware, I would say quite the contrary. We are being entirely socially aware. We are aware of the fact that the hobby is far bigger than D&D. That there's a whole community out there that run even just within the realms of fantasy RPGs, that run fantasy RPGs and take players on wonderful adventures that aren't D&D. this notion that it has to, no one is an asshole for saying this is if you're not happy with the situation with D&D, and if you're not happy, then you're entitled to not be happy. If you're not happy with what they're doing over at Wizards of the Coast, that's fine. You're perfectly entitled to not be happy. I'm not telling you you have to accept it. You don't. You don't have to accept it. Vote with your feet. Vote with your wallet. Try another RPG. Wizards of the Coast, I think, are making a serious mistake with this. And the thing that I think is the serious miscalculation most of all is you don't need to play. First of all, you don't need to play D&D. There are lots of other fantasy RPGs. There's lots of other RPGs out there. But moreover, if your RPG of choice is D&D 5th, you are under no obligation, legal, moral, financial, any of that, to go to D&D next, D&D 1. You don't have to. You can just keep on playing D&D 5th. And people will say, well, they'll stop making 5e content. Yeah, they probably will. But there is a plethora of 5e content out there right now. If you are upset enough that you will not be going into D&D 1, vote with your feet. Buy the content for D&D 5th now, before it goes out of print and goes for silly money. Buy it now. Buy those campaign settings now, either official ones or third-party content. Buy those things now before they do become obsolete. And you will have years of gaming in those. Years upon years of it. Or, as an alternative, look at other fantasy RPGs. There are a truckload of them, as I've said. There's the Age system. I still maintain that Dragon Age is one of the best beginner systems I've ever seen. There's Dungeon Crawl Classics. There's plenty of RPGs that fall under the OSR. There's sort of unique fantasy takes, like my favourite game, Castle Falkenstein. There are so many fantasy games. Or you can get a generic system like Fate or GURPS or Savage Worlds that have fantasy campaign set. I mean, Savage Worlds has recently done a Pathfinder for Savage Worlds. There's Pathfinder, which is, the kind of main rival for D&D. I think the only possible worry with what Wizards are doing is that, given they're such an industry heavyweight in terms of RPGs, that if they are seen to be successful with this model, other companies might follow suit so as to get a piece of that pie. Um, I say to those people, this is all the more reason to vote with your feet. Either stick with 5e or try another game. Don't give D&D 1 the money. If it's shown to be a bad business model, other companies won't go for it. And tabletop as a hobby will be preserved. And this isn't me being any kind of grognard or gatekeeping. This is just the practicalities of it. So no, I dismiss utterly the notion that telling D&D 5th players who are upset with what Wizards are doing to try another game as being an arsehole to be utterly without merit. I suppose there are those who may be saying it in a very flippant manner. Perhaps with a certain sneer and condescendence with it. But if you are in all honesty telling people that they don't have to go for D&D 1, you can, to use an old pontoon term, stick or twist. Either stick with D&D 5th, get stuff now, and just leave D&D 1 alone. You don't have to go for it. You can just stick with D&D 5th. Or you can twist and try a different system. They're both valid answers to the question what to do about Wizards of the Coast. Now, yes, you can complain, you can send a letter, you can make a comment, you can make a video. But it doesn't change the simple premise that no player is under obligation to try a new game, to go for this new game, to go for the new version of D&D when it comes out. You are under no obligation. 5th edition working for you, go for it. Just stick with it. Enjoy it. Disillusioned with Wizards of the Coast, really don't want to give D&D a go, try a different system. There's nothing arsehole about that at all. That's just common sense and good advice. So yeah, to the person who said that on Twitter, you're wrong. Whilst, as I say, whilst there may be people who are saying it with a sneering tone, and just being condescending, the advice itself is not being an arsehole. And I reckon the vast majority of people who have given that advice are not being an arsehole about it. They're being genuinely honest when they say, if you're not happy with what Wizards are doing, stick with 5e, with what you've got. Just buy new stuff now. Buy the stuff that you feel you need, and just, that's it. Cut them off. Or try a different system. Either way, this hobby is not going to die with D&D. D&D will not kill the hobby. On the contrary, I think if everyone goes, oh, there's this other game, and make that as popular, then D&D just becomes a game in the crowd rather than assumed to be the game. So, as I say, not a video I thought I would have to make, and certainly not under my present circumstances. I'll deal with that in a second. But thanks everyone for watching, and I'll be back soon with another video.